Morena koutou. I just wanted to give you this morning a bit of an operational update from Fire and Emergency as to what's happening and what's happening specifically with Muriwai as well. So before we go into that, I also just want to acknowledge that overnight there's been reports of further fatalities across the country, and our hearts go out to the families of those who have potentially lost their lives last night. And it's a really difficult time for New Zealand. Also, our people on the ground, have been working tirelessly now for a number of days, and I just want to acknowledge and appreciate the hard work that they've been doing alongside all the other emergency services across the country, and all the services really across government that have been responding to the cyclone. I think as we look at that, as New Zealand wakes this morning, there's parts of the country who are really, still in the middle of the effects of what the cyclone has. And when we look at places, like in the Hawke's Bay, around Wairoa, around Napier, when we look in Tairāwhiti, there's communities who are right in the heart of, the impacts of the cyclone as our weather starts to clear in different parts of the country. So again, our hearts go out to all of those people in those communities, and want to really acknowledge the trauma, the hard impact on them that they're all going through. But I flick over to, firstly, if I call on our National USAR Operations Manager, Craig Monrad, who's just going to give a little bit of an update on the operations out at Muriwai at the moment. So, Craig.
Thank you, Terry. Morning, everyone. Thank you very much. Just to put it in context, we've got over 100 USAR technical experts across the country operating from Northland down to Tairāwhiti, now into the Hawke's Bay. So we're conscious about managing that resource along with what's happening here in Auckland. So that's quite, and we've been deploying people from across the country to make that work. Our focus is directly in Auckland and the impact that it's had at this stage, and with that, our operations that were underway that started on Monday night. In regards to the event out Muriwai, we had to call operations early in the morning on Tuesday morning because of concerns around the safety, and that is our primary focus. So we regrouped in the morning, Tuesday morning, first light, with other agencies, and did a risk assessment of what the situation was before we resumed operations, and that determined our operations for the day. Last night, those operations ceased at dark because it was unable for us to maintain a safe area of operations during those nighttime hours. We've resumed operations this morning. We're resuming operations this morning. Our crews are out there now, and they're assessing the situation, and they will start back on operations on carrying on looking for our missing firefighter. That's it.
Thank you, Craig. And Ron Devlin, our region manager for Te Hiku, which is Northland and Auckland, I was just going to give a bit of an update on where we're at across this part of the world.
Tēnā koutou katoa, and again taking the opportunity to acknowledge both the population and all of our firefighters and emergency responders across the motu this morning. Look, up in Te Tai Tokerau, we continue to, reform our communication systems across there. That part of the country took quite a hiding on Saturday, Sunday and Monday. And of course, this morning we have a focus on the flooding in Dargaville and what's happening in that particular place as we regroup and prepare our people to support the emergency management in that space, as well as Kawakawa as well. We have similar flooding issues there. With respect to across Auckland, we had a medium number of calls overnight. We have obviously got safety monitoring in space in place for Muriwai and Karikari, where we're still determining some the damage across there, and we're also looking at the fact that if we have to move north again, we've got problems in the Brandowans. I'd also like to just establish the fact that at the moment one of our biggest points of focus is the welfare of our people. As I'm sure the population will understand, across particularly Tami Kimikaura and Tita Tokoro, there's been a couple of weeks of heavy workload for our people out there, and we need to maintain their ability to respond. Well, specifically in Muriwai, we have been wrapping welfare of, we've got officers looking after families there and professional help to make sure that that's monitored. The station itself has been stood down and has been covered daily yesterday by Titirangi and by other stations across the region to ensure that there's still an operational response in Muriwai, but the firefighters there are able to take a break and start to go into that healing space. We'll continue to monitor them and specifically the families of the injured and make sure that they're well looked after and supported as we go forward. Thank you, Kerry.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. And before we go into some questions, I'll just introduce our Deputy National Commander, Dr. Stephanie Rotarangi, and she's just going to give an update around the operation across the country. Anything in that space?
Tēnā koutou katoa and morena. As my colleagues have said, the number of calls across the country has been steady overnight, and I would like to focus specifically in on Tairāwhiti and Hawke's Bay at this stage. So as it has also been said, we have had some difficulties continuing with our communications in both Tairāwhiti and Hawke's Bay. And of course, it's not just for an emergency. Our communities are deeply impacted by this at the moment. So there are still challenges with fully assessing the situation. However, I have been in contact with our teams in Tairāwhiti and Hawke's Bay this morning, and their stories of resilience and adaptation have been incredibly inspiring. So while there is plenty of work to do, our ability to pre-position resources from across the country, the warning that we had of the storm, and our ability to adapt to the scenes that are in front of us has been really fantastic in this incident. So again, our crews are on the ground. They will be dealing with a lot today as daylight breaks, particularly in the Hawke's Bay, and we'll continue to get updates for you throughout the day. While the weather event may dissipate, hopefully over the coming hours, we are all conscious that the relief efforts are extensive. There may be people that we have not been able to maintain contact with, so we'll continue to prioritise as we go. So thank you, Kerry.
Thank you. And just lastly, before I go to questions, we have, with the permission of the family, got permission to release the name of our firefighter who's in hospital. I can say that Craig Stevens, who's our firefighter, is in a critical but stable condition at the moment. And I guess we are also in touch with the family of our firefighter who's missing. And what I would say is that we're respecting the privacy of our two firefighters' families, and we would certainly ask the media to show the equal respect for their families at this difficult time. So we're not releasing the name of our missing firefighter, but I can confirm the name, with the permission of the family, of our firefighter in hospital is Craig Stevens. So thank you, and I open up for any questions.
So the missing firefighter in Muriwai has been missing for 2 days now. Just are you able to explain just how hard this is hitting the brigade and the firemen?
Yeah, well, I went out to Muriwai yesterday with Ron, our regional manager, and spoke with members of the brigade, spoke with the chief fire officer out there, and it's devastating. Like, you know, the brigade is really reeling, as you would expect. Brigades, you know, especially, well, all of our brigades are very much like families. So it's like losing a family member. So this, you know, it's going to be a long healing process for brigades, because we don't lose firefighters every day. This is a really rare event for us. It's a rare event for, you know, that brigade, and they're reeling.
What are some of the challenges that you're facing in this recovery?
In the Steph,
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Kerry. Thank you for the question. The question was about challenges in general with USAR operations, but specifically to Muriwai. Look, we're really conscious that it is a devastating time while people are waiting for news, but USAR operations are very precise and considered, and it's extremely important that we take a really coordinated approach to what we're doing there. Of course, the conditions of the day dictate the actual steps that we will take, but I just wanted to perhaps point out that with our technical rescues in Muriwai and across the country, much is done to ensure that time is of the essence. However, they are very precise operations on the ground. So what that will look like today, first and foremost, is again assessing the stability of the land around the site. Our crews obviously managed to get a number of hours of work in yesterday, so they will be segmenting their approach based on where they believe likelihood of success will be. So again, assessing the site, they'll have drones and specialists with them, and they will have heavy machinery and other tools to undertake works today if conditions permit. So again, there are some very technical aspects to urban search and rescue, but our teams out there today, they know that time is of the essence, and they will continue to work as quickly as is possible. Thank you, Kerry.
Just a little bit what search and rescue has looked like up until this point in terms of some of the work that those technicians and consultants have been doing.
We might go to Craig just to get into some of that detail around what those USAR crews are carrying out on the ground.
Yeah, excuse me. So I guess as the incident evolved, safety is their primary focus. So we had that staged approach as Steve was talked about. The operational is about we use a number of means to try and identify where the person might be. We've got our canine search dog. We have thermal imaging cameras. We have listening devices and a whole lot of other means to try and identify where the person might be. We had indicators that initially, I guess, of where Craig, the first firefighter, was located, and we extricated him that night. So that gave us an area of operations, and then we start to deconstruct the site safely to enable us to get into those deep into the I guess the voids that we're hoping to find someone in.
Are you happy with the progress that's been made up until this point and with the staff that are on the ground at the moment?
Absolutely. So I got some context from the operation officer that was out there, Glenn Hudson, that's running our operation for us. And these people are world class in their expertise and what happens and how we do this. So I said, what's been going on? What have you done? And where we achieved? So there was a house that they've actually deconstructed piece by piece, and the landslide around it, which is, he said, 2,000 cubic metres of soil has been removed to actually try and get into that location. So there was two houses, if you know the context of what's out there. One house is down on the other one. Now they're sort of trying to make their way into the other house so they can actually try and deconstruct that while removing all that dirt away from it. So we're talking large numbers, I guess large quantity of debris and soil that has to be removed safely because everything that gets removed has an impact on the work site and the safety of that. So.
Can you mention the safety of those workers? Are you concerned at all that there might be other buildings in the area that could come down at this time?
No, so our situational awareness of the scene using our drones and previous knowledge provides us that picture, and I guess put the context of the aerial observations is we can, and daylight operations is that we can monitor the scene and keep an eye on what that looks like. So.
I think just putting that into context as well is that these are highly complex situations. When Craig says that our teams are world class, we're assessed by a world class international organisation with standards to maintain a assessment of a heavy USAR team. So that's a really robust process that we go through, and our people in those teams, it's a highly calculated operation that they go through. So the surrounds are being monitored constantly while we're operating to ensure if there's any movement in there, and it's a piece by piece process. So the last thing that we want is to make the situation worse and more difficult to the location. So it's highly technical in what they do, but it's a slow, methodical process that they need to go through to make it safe. So.
Kerry, this morning you started your address by saying that the fatalities have not got further fatalities. Is FENZ worried that the firefighter that is missing is a fatality?
As I said yesterday, the longer the search goes on for the firefighter, we've got grave concerns for the safety of our firefighter. Yes.
It may be just worth saying that as we enter today, as the sun comes up, people are leaning in, and our intention is to bring our guy home.
Yeah, I would say though, our teams on the ground, our USAR teams, our firefighters out there, no one has given up hope for our firefighter, and we are approaching it with as much expediency as we can to try and locate.
So it's still considered a rescue mission, not a recovery?
Certainly by our people, that we're considering it a rescue mission, and hoping to get a successful result.
Sorry, could we move to the books back? Can you talk us through how many rescues were carried out overnight?
So when we move specifically to the Hawke's Bay, my goodness, those conditions are challenging for the communities and the firefighters. So when it comes to releasing numbers, I would ask for a little bit of time to ensure that those numbers are correct. With the communications issues that we've been facing and just the sheer number of tasking that our firefighters have, we don't necessarily want them tied up with paperwork at this time and logging off calls, and they need to be where they need to be. So in general, our calls have remained steady. I think over the last 24 hours it's been in the same magnitude, around that 1,700, 1,800 nationally. Specific to the Hawke's Bay, it is fair to say we still have a number of jobs on the books. However, I'd just like a bit of time to be able to triage that, and we'll provide a further release at the 1,300 NEMA stand-up today. From what I can see though, calls did ease overnight, and it's incredibly grateful to communities with the calls and the information that they've been able to provide us when they're dialing 111 if really challenging situations for them. So calls did not skyrocket overnight. They've been reasonably steady in the Hawke's Bay. That could be because conditions are easing. It also could be because communications have been problematic. Thank you. Yeah.
Can you tell us which areas within Hawke's Bay do you have most concerns about in relation to traffic people?
Thank you. So as you'll be aware, we also have a national state of emergency at the moment. So it's been really helpful to be working alongside that whole of government response, and the New Zealand Defence Force in particular has been providing us with a lot of intel about communities that we may or may not have got to yet. I mean, it's fair to say that obviously the whole of Hawke's Bay is impacted, but we still have isolated areas, Napier, Hastings, Wairoa, and then it's hard to get a gauge on some of those more rural areas at the moment. So I think that there is still broad coverage of concern, people evacuated, which will take time to triage. Thank you.
You mentioned those communication issues and the fact that you're still working on assessing the damage. Are there concerns that there might be people that need rescuing or need connection to support services that haven't been reached yet?
That is always our concern. So we will, daylight is helpful. We will continue to assess through the means that we have and working with our partner agencies. But our concern is not only the jobs that we have on the books, but the jobs we don't know about yet. Again, back to our ability to get warning on the storm has really allowed us to move into these areas before the storm hit. So I have confidence with the teams on the ground that they will be undertaking those assessments.
In terms of those communication issues in Gisborne, there seems to be pretty significant problems just using internet and basic tools to communicate. How is fire and emergency communicating with those people on the ground?
Yeah, so we have a number of backup plans in situations like that, and it is fair to say that our normal processes have been challenged. So pages, phones, radios have been challenging. So what we revert to is our satellite phones at times. but we also have ways to set up to communicate on the ground where necessary. Yes, so all redundancies have been challenged, but to my knowledge, we've been able to maintain satellite phone contact with key personnel, and they are making their own arrangements to contact each other as is appropriate.
In your career, have you seen any damage like this before on such a widespread basis? Is this one of the worst impacts that you've seen for that particular area?
I think time will tell when we're able to actually triage exactly the impact. It would be unfair to people at the moment to be able to say that we have clear numbers on this, but instinctively, yeah, this has been one hell of a job. Yeah.
Just this morning, speaking with our district manager at Tairāwhiti, one of the things that he articulated to me was, with that communications that you ask about, a lot of those were cut off into some of the areas along that coastline. And it really highlighted the importance of the pre-positioning that we had there. But our troops on the ground were responding to the community, so they were actually connecting with the community at that local need. They'd set up a hub there in Ruatoria with civil defence, with St John's, with police, and with fire and emergency, and with defence in there, and actually looking at listening to the community, because it couldn't come from a central point. So I think one of the things that the emergency response agencies do really well is adapt in emergencies when things go wrong, because it is always dynamic. When you get to emergencies, what you find in front of you, it's not always what's being communicated, and it's really important that that breadth of thinking and dynamic risk assessment is what we train our people for, so they can adapt in those situations. And I'm really proud of the stories that are coming out across the country of how our people have been adapting when they haven't had the same levels of communication that they've always had, and just responding to the community need. So.
What is your message to locals getting involved in rescue, whether they have a boat themselves? Do you encourage that sort of?
I would refer to that as spontaneous volunteerism, and it's always a challenge, to be honest, within the emergency response environment, because it needs to be a coordinated response. So what I would say is people who want to offer their help, to make sure that they're connecting that with the hub of emergency response, whatever that may be in their community. But there are times as well, you would have seen over the past few days where your neighbour's in trouble, and you're supporting your neighbour to get out, and that sort of thing is dynamic. That's also spontaneous volunteerism, and that's a part of the real value of New Zealand. But when we go further than that immediacy, it's about connecting with the larger organisations, or the coordination, to make sure that we can do it in a coordinated response, and it's not affecting the high level response across the country.
Remembering what we're seeing in, remembering what we're seeing in Muriwai is a response from professionals, and so therefore we can see the dangers and the risks involved there as well.
Can we just clarify the spelling of the name Craig Stevens?
Yeah, we'll do that. Michelle will provide that to you.
We'll provide that after this. Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for your time today, and as always, it's nice to be able to speak to you and give you an update on where things are at. So, thank you.
Thanks, guys.